Hello everyone, Kaoz here, and welcome to another old school RuneScape video. If you look up mid-game guides for OSRS, you will notice that it's one of the most popular topics about the game. I think there's this notion that the mid-game is what feels the longest before you get to the fun part, and people want to get it over with as quickly as possible. It's been quite a long time since my last video aimed to this part of the player base, and with more content coming in 2025, I think it's time for an update. In April we will focus on guides for the mid-game, so if this interests you, consider subscribing with notifications on, drop a like, and join our Discord server with the link in the description to play with me and our community, and get as many tips as possible to get over the mid-game. So like I said before, I think mid-game videos will always be healthy for our community, because with more and more content added to old school RuneScape, the goalpost to exit the mid-game just keeps on moving. I mean, I'm pretty sure that what was considered exiting the mid-game in 2022 or 2023 is pretty different compared to some goals we have nowadays. Because of this, I will give you 15 things I would personally do in 2025 to consider myself at the end of the mid-game. I ordered these in terms of difficulty or how tedious they might seem, but that's not to say that the later ones are pretty hard. I will ask for your number one mid-game goal at the end for a chance of a bond, and with that being said, let's begin. The very first thing I would do is unlock as many transportation methods as possible. Even with run energy changes, you will notice that your run energy is still pretty limited, even if you have an okay agility level and a full graceful. Without stamina potions, this is even more obvious, and getting around the map for quests will be fairly annoying. As you all know, we start our journey around Gielinor with a standard spellbook. I would say level 54 is more than enough to get to key locations like Varlamore, Lumbridge, Falador, Camelot, Karend, Ardi, and Civitas Illafortis. I would still consider this magic level relatively low, but it will come in handy when you need to get to key locations around the map. Quest-wise, I recommend doing Fairy Tale Part 1 and the partial completion of the second part for access to fairy rings. If you do the easy Ardi Diary for the Ardi Cloak 1, you will unlock the best early to mid-game fairy ring teleport in the game near the Tower of Life. Another important item is called Kaoz Memoirs, which hopefully I'm pronouncing right, which lets you teleport to the 5 main cities around Karend, being Hosidius, Piscarilius, Shazian, Lovakenge, and Arceus. You will need to do the respective quests after completion of X marks the spot to unlock this massive continent, and they are all pretty easy to do. Obviously, we have a ton more teleport methods with other items or spells, but these will have you covered for the most part, and will let you access content a lot quicker to start exploring more areas around RuneScape. If you know of any other crucial teleport method, let us know in a comment. This next one might feel a little bit out of place, but it's super important to mention early on because of something I will mention right after. If you haven't been paying attention for a while, we have a massive new area south of Karend by the name Varlamore. When this released in early 2024, we were given tons of content right away, along a bunch of quests. September saw the release of even more content in Varlamore for both scaling and PVMing, and these have been some of the best updates in recent memory. Now, why am I talking about Varlamore? In case you haven't living under a rock, we are getting the third and the final part of this epic storyline around summer of 2025. We will get new quests, new bosses, new scaling methods, and maybe a few surprises here and there. So you might be wondering, what does this all have to do with the mid-game? And that is that for you to at least try and experiment content coming with the final dawn, I'd recommend doing all the Varlamore quests and interacting with as much of it as possible. This to soak in both the storyline and the vibe of this new continent. You have mid-level encounters like the Awakeoatl, the Amoxiliatl, new skilling methods like Hunter Rumors, House Keys, Offerings to Ralos, and Mastering Mixology to mention a few. The Colosseum will be a little bit out of reach even for players who are in the late game, but other than this, opening the entire continent of Varlamore before experiencing the grand finale will be crucial, so you're not locked out of the fun as soon as the update drops. This one is mostly for Ironmen, but main accounts could also benefit from it. No matter what type of account you play, it's always a good idea to start experiencing easy PVM encounters for both self-improvement and the chances at better gear. And for this, we will be hitting up the Barrows Brothers and the Moons of Peril. Barrows has been a staple to mid and even late game accounts for quite a long time, because as long as you have a decent magic weapon, you can start farming for tier 70 armor, which will have you covered for most of your journey to more powerful gear. This gets even better with the medium combat achievements, which we will talk about later, and the fact that the Barrows brothers are weak to air spells, so nowadays you don't really need a trident to do them more efficiently. Barrows gear is going to massively help our next grind being the Moons of Peril. I purposely skipped over this one during a previous topic to avoid repeating it, but in order to do it more comfortably, you will need decently high defense gear to avoid being absolutely racked by the moons themselves, especially the Blood Moon, which heals based on damage dealt. and the tankier you are, the less the chances at the massive heals to avoid pulling your hair out. While Barrow's gear is mostly important for armor, Moon's will also provide a decent melee and ranged weapons, being the Maracas and the Atlatl for melee and the ranged respectively. This one may sound a little out of place for the beginning of our list, and at 70s or 75s combat you could say you are already exiting the mid-game, but it's something to keep in mind to help you in the long run to tank and deal more damage for faster training. If you watch some videos going over mid-game goals, I can guarantee some, if not most of them, will make separate categories for pieces of gear. To avoid making this list too long, I'll tell you important items for all combat styles, as well as level requirements and where to get them from. Remember, these are just a few key items, and for a full list, check out my 2024 gear progression guide for all styles. Speaking of all styles, 2 items that will help a melee, ranged, and magic are the Barrow's gloves and an Amulet of Fury. The first one is obtained by fully completing the Recipe for Disaster quest, and the second one can be bought at the Grand Exchange. For iron accounts, a Glory should be easier to make since a Fury has a higher requirement. For melee, you have staple items like the Nezi Helm, a Fire Cape, Dragon Defender, and a weapon choice depending on your level. The Dragon Scimitar at level 60, and either a Sarachnis Cudgel or Zombie Axe at level 65. The Cudgel is faster but has a lower max hit, and the Zombie Axe is the opposite, hitting higher numbers, 1 tick slower. For ranged, level 50 is needed for a Magic Shortbow Imbued, level 60 for Mixed Hide Armor, and level 66 for the Sunlight Hunter Crossbow to train towards the Blowpipe at level 75. Don't forget your Avos Accumulator after completion of a quest called Animal Magnetism. Mage gear is kinda sad in comparison, but Bloodbark Armor at level 60 will provide a bit of extra damage, along items like a Warped Scepter at level 62, and a Book of Darkness after completion of the quest What Lies Below. Get a full set of Ancient Pages from the GE for a decent magic item on a budget. This next one is pretty simple and further expands on our first topic. You simply cannot call yourself an endgame player without unlocking all 3 available spellbooks, being Ancient, Lunar, and Arceus. The order doesn't really matter, but I'll quickly tell you why they are useful. The Ancient spellbook is mostly combat oriented and has a ton of single and multi-target spells that will come in pretty handy for PVMing. It also offers useful teleports like Canifis, and for those of you non-hardcore accounts, important locations in the Wildy like Gorok and Karalangar. The Lunar spellbook is the opposite. You will find a ton of utility spells, some of which are locked behind the hard Fremennik Diary. You will be able to train magic and earn quite a bit of profit during the later levels, and it also provides single and the multi-teleport spells to important areas like the Lunar Isle, the ZMI Altar, and even Barbarian Outpost. Finally, we have the Arceus spellbook with options for combat, utility, and the teleport. You will notice a ton of people using this because of the very popular spell being Thrall Resurrection, but even if you don't care about efficiency, options like the Grime, Offering, and Reanimation spells will go greatly along other important teleport locations. I obviously didn't mention the standard spellbook, but remember that thanks to elemental weaknesses, this one is now more competitive, especially for the early and the mid-game. Don't forget to try out air, water, earth, and fire spells on monsters that are weak to them to kill them faster and get more experience than before. I believe the last time I made this video, I said that a mid-game goal was to obtain a quest cape. Thanks to the addition of quests like Desert Treasure 2 and Wild Gothic Sleeps, I think that goalpost has moved a little bit. While you may still be able to finish challenging Grandmaster quests like Dragon Slayer 2 and Monkey Madness 2 with mid-level stats and gear, the quest cape now sounds like something you could potentially get when you start the late game. I would say that as long as you finish every quest on the list except for the Grandmaster ones, you'll be set to embark on the most fun and rewarding adventures in the game. If you look at the skills required to obtain the quest cape, the highest one is 75 for magic. In the grand scheme of things, level 75 is barely 1 million experience. For the early or mid-game, getting here could be a little bit of a struggle. If I made an unrestricted account today, I would aim to complete quests in order of difficulty being Novice, Intermediate, Experience, and Master, and then train combat for a little bit because those Grandmaster quest bosses could be a bit of trouble. Even though it's not impossible, if I imagine doing Desert Treasure 2 with mid-levels, I would feel a little intimidated. Don't forget that the quest cape is a great item once you obtain it, because it's the closest teleport to a fairy ring in the game, tied with the one you can make in your POH. So for any content that requires a fairy ring teleport, definitely this is something you're gonna wanna get. Something that ties closely to questing is the achievement diary system. These may seem tedious, but you will only have to do them once, and some of the rewards are way too juicy to ignore. I made an entire video on the Achievement Diary rewards and how useful they are, so you can check out that video if you have some extra time. As for the mid-game, if you have a quest cape or if you're close to it with base level 60s or 70s, you have mostly everything you need for all the hard diary tasks. Keep in mind that these are just for the requirements, and it doesn't take the actual grind for some of them. I mean, if you want to do the hard Lumbridge diary, the highest the levels required are 70 crafting and cooking. Pretty simple, right? Well, don't get too excited, because you will have to unlock Bones to Peaches at the Mage Training Arena. Even with quality of life changes to this place in 2024, it continues to be unbearable for someone that has to do it at some point. Compared to something like catching a red salamander for the RD diary, the time it takes to complete some of them will feel a little daunting. This will all be worth it because both the passive effects for your account are extremely beneficial, and a lot of the items you receive will be very useful for the grind. The RD Cloak teleports you to the RD Farming Patch, the Falador Shield locates the Giant Mole, the Radis Blessing provides decent teleports in Kourend, and the list goes on. Check out the video I mentioned to learn more about all the benefits you can receive with the Achievement Diary system. Coming back to something combat related, a quick one I recommend is obtaining all 3 Ratbone weapons by getting 3 Scurrius spines from the Rat boss. To some players this may seem useless, but for those of you who don't know, hear me out. Remember that Scurrius is now arguably the best melee experience if done in a group. I guess Jagex incentivized groups by giving Scurrius a higher experience multiplier when done with other people, so the higher the numbers, the better. Not only do Ratbone weapons provide higher hits against rat enemies, but you will be able to kill the rats summoned by Scurrius every single tick. With good clicks, you can kill all 6 of them in under 4 seconds, leading to accelerated experience gains. Some of you may notice that I recommend getting all 3 weapons, but only mention the training melee. Thanks to methods like Chinchampas and barraging, this is not the best experience per hour in the game for range and magic respectively, but if you want to avoid spending millions of GP on supplies, training at Scurrius with a bow or staff in a group will be great to achieve higher levels. Remember that any excess spines can be traded in for experience lamps, which will only make the experience gains even faster. Once you reach the late or end game though, this is something you won't really do other than defeating Scurrius for the pet. Going back to skilling, I recommend you get all the skilling outfits available in the game. Some of them will be obtained passively by training their respective skill, and others are a little bit out of the way but will be quite useful later on. The ones you can obtain without a big detour are Graceful by running rooftop courses, Pyromancer by training at the Winter Toad, Hunter Gear by taking part in Hunter Rumors, Prospector by training at the Motherlode Mine, Raiments of the Eye via Guardians of the Rift, and the Lumberjack outfit if you train woodcutting and participate in forestry events. The ones you might have to hunt separately are the Carpenter's outfit by training construction via Mahogany Homes, the Farmer's outfit from the Tide Farm, the Angler's outfit from Fishing Trawler or Aerial Fishing, Zealot robes from Shades of Morton, the Smith's uniform from Giant's Foundry, Rogue's equipment from the Rogue's Den, and you can also obtain the Lumberjack outfit through temple trekking. Not all of these are 100% mandatory for their respective skill, but you will need some of these for Master Clue steps since you will be asked to do different activities by wearing them. You will need Graceful, Angler, Prospector, and the Lumberjack, and if you get a Master Clue step that requires them and you don't have said items, it will basically make you want to drop the clue. This next one is pretty straightforward. I'll make it quick because you might be pretty close to it if you're looking at this as a list you might want to do in order. I recommend setting a goal of base level stats, including those that may have been a little neglected for quests or the diary grind. Other than levels, you can set goals to unlock training methods that may interest you to make the grind more tolerable, or even achieve items that will help you get more experience per hour. You could get level 75 rune crafting for the Giant Pouch, 72 agility for the 3rd floor in the Hallowed Sepulchre, and 72 Hunter for Expert Rumors, just to mention a few. I know that even level 75 may sound like late game instead of mid, but like we said before, level 75 is only 1.2 million experience. You're not even 10% of the way to a 99, so unlocking content that will motivate you to achieve a skill cape is definitely a great mid-game goal to achieve. After getting level 70 or 75 Slayer for some juicy quests or achievement diaries, it's time to focus on this skill for a little bit until you feel comfortable enough to start going on a few bossing trips, to try out new content, or even some raids with your friends. And for this, we will be setting up for Slayer success. If you don't have a Slayer helmet at this point, it would be the perfect time to amass 400 points to unlock it. Even before you do so, you may imbue your black mask at either the Nightmare Zone, Soul Wars, or PvP Arena to give it extra power for the ranged and magic combat style as well. Remember that without doing so, this item is only going to benefit the melee style. I also recommend spending a few points on your block list and extensions. This goes above the scope of this video, and for it, I will recommend my most recent Slayer tips video to learn how to gain experience for the skill a little more efficiently, and have more fun with it to make it less tedious. Small things like the proper use of your cannon, when to bring expeditious or slaughter bracelets, efficient Slayer locations if not using Connor as your Slayer master, and a good list of blocks, cancels and extensions, just to mention a few. Slayer is one of the most important skills in the entire game for money making, or even for iron accounts, so we are looking to speed up the mid-game to start battling more powerful monsters. Now that we are a little more comfortable with PvM, I would say something you simply cannot live without during the mid-game nowadays are the new prayers unlocked via the Royal Titans, the latest addition to the mid-game bossing experience. If you recently came back to the game and didn't know about them, here's a quick refresher. Melee has useful prayers at level 60 and 70 in the form of Chivalry and the Piety. For ranged and magic, we have Eagle Eye and the Mystic Might, but these don't really do much in comparison because of the lower prayer level requirement. For actual useful prayers, you have Rigor and Augury at levels 74 and 77 respectively. For main accounts, these are super cheap nowadays, but for Irons, you need to go to Chambers for some DPS upgrades. In February of 2025, Jagex added a new mid-game encounter by the name Royal Titans. The Fire Queen and the Ice King are able to drop the Mystic Vigor and the Deadeye Prayer Scrolls. When you read these untradeable items, it will permanently upgrade the aforementioned prayers, and you'll have a meaningful boost to your ranged and magic DPS at levels 62 and 63 prayer respectively. Mystic Vigor offers a 3% magic damage bonus along offensive and defensive stats, but Deadeye provides an obscene 18% range strength, which is only 5% behind Rigor. Come to think of it, maybe this is part of the reason why the Dexterous Prayer Scroll is now dirt cheap, since you can just camp Titans for a while and skip the Chambers grind. Regardless, you simply cannot call yourself a late game player without these two at your disposal. Hit up our Discord server if you want people to do Titans together and to farm them for their uniques. With a ton of quests, gear, base levels, and hopefully your new prayers, it is time to venture into something that has become a staple part of your progression during all stages of your account. The combat achievement system has received several quality of life changes over its lifespan, and some people think it only matters for the Elite, Master, and Grandmaster tier, but let me explain. Thanks to an update where Jagex made the combat diary point-based instead of having to complete every single task in its category for be eligible, not counting Grandmaster, every combat achievement now counts towards your progress, and you could get the easy, medium, and hard tier much quicker by doing seemingly more challenging activities. Some of the rewards include increased chances at hard clues from every monster that drops it, a higher limit to the number of bosses you want to slay when being assigned a boss task, creating a Wayne-Coatl instance for free, and more insane ones like the Gomel's Hilt 3 for unlimited teleports to the Godwars dungeon, 50% discount on Nightmare Zone imbues, 45 cannonballs for your cannon instead of 30, and my favorite one for this tier, more points from pest control to speed up the grind for Void pieces and Elite Void. You will be getting some of these achievements passively as you quest and casually level up, but when it's time to focus on them, you could check out the list to see if you can do a few Elite, Master, or even Grandmaster combat achievements for quicker progress towards these beautiful rewards. I mentioned this one quickly in our previous video, but I'll focus a little bit more on it. Clue scrolls aren't necessarily part of the mid-game experience if you don't want, but they can be a nice distraction in case you want the chances at cool or expensive items from old school RuneScape's loot box system. These are also essential for iron accounts because some clue steps need other clue items to do them. So these should be part of your plan at some point. I say this because if you want to do clue scrolls more efficiently, I recommend filling up the beginner, easy, medium, and even harder tier of stash units around the game to avoid having items in your bank and do your clue steps as soon as possible. Go to the OSRS wiki and type OSRS stash units to see all of the available locations and the items you need for each one. The higher the tier, the higher the construction level required. This is something fun you can do to take a break from the grind, because I love to check boxes on the list, and having them filled up is going to feel pretty rewarding. Most, if not all of the items for stash units up to hard are extremely cheap, but master stash units can be quite expensive. This is where iron accounts come into play, because like I said before, you may potentially need an easy clue item to perform a hard clue step. You can also go to Watson's house in Hosidius to see in-game checklist of all the stash units. Last but not least, I heavily recommend being able to set up moneymakers for you to earn at least 15 million GP every 2 weeks, in case you want to pay for membership with coins. As most of you know, not only can you get OSRS membership for $14 a month, but a bond can get you half of that. This will be especially tough during the early game, and doing so in the mid game is no easy task. I always recommend people getting between 1 and 3 months of membership with real cash if you're able to, of course depending on how many hours you're able to play per day, and focus on questing and skilling during the early game. When you can do farm runs efficiently, or go on a few bossing trips for profit to mention a few, earning your membership via online currency won't be as difficult. And even less when you reach the end game and can kill bosses like Vorkath or Zulra who are just too generous with their drops. Even at the low KC per trip, their average drops is around 100k, so an approximate 150k every 2 weeks isn't outside the realm of possibilities. And who knows, you could get lucky and get even more GP out of some of your kills to speed up the process. I have a ton of money making methods on my channel, and for next week's video, we will go over mid-game bosses you can kill for decent profit without putting too much effort into it. And then, a list of mid-game bosses for both money and getting better at the game. If you can't wait for those, join our Discord and ask how to make some quick cash, or go and group the bosses or raids with our community for some tasty uniques. So, boys and girls, that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoyed and you learned something useful. If you did, tell me your number 1 tip for the mid-game, and if you include the term RSN and your username in your comment, you'll be entered in our weekly bond giveaway, for which we will pick a winner on Friday's stream. A massive thank you to all the people you see on this list for supporting the channel monetarily. Your contributions go towards my family's weekly supply of tacos and beans, and a local animal shelter to help puppies with food, beds, and even toys. If you want to be part of this list of legends, click the join button below to see all the cool perks you can get for a monthly fee in the videos, in the live streams, and of course in the Discord. So like I said before, our next video will go over mid-game monsters to kill for profit at extremely low effort to work towards your membership or your next upgrade. For now, I hope you have an amazing day, have an amazing week, and I will see you then. Peace.